The ringtone of my phone cut through the quiet hum of our old Ford truck like a jagged knife. I didn't even need to look at the screen to know who it was. It was Saturday. It was 4 p.m., and, like clockwork, the demands were about to begin. "Pick it up, Jen," Mateo said softly, keeping his eyes on the road. His hands, rough and calloused from years of carpentry, gripped the steering wheel with a gentleness that always made my chest ache. He knew. He always knew. I swiped answer and put it on speaker. "Where are you?" The voice wasn't asking. It was demanding. It was David, my older brother, the golden child, the entrepreneur. "Mom says you're bringing the ice. We need 4 bags. Not the cheap stuff from the gas station. Get the clear cubes from the liquor store. And grab 2 cases of Heineken, the imported kind." "Hello to you too, David," I said, my voice steady, though my stomach tightened. "We're about 20 minutes out, and we already bought the ice." "Well, if it melts, you're going back out," he snapped, "and park that beat-up truck of Mateo's down the street. I have potential investors coming tonight. I don't need them seeing that junk in the driveway next to my Lexus. It ruins the aesthetic." Click. He hung up. No thank you, no how are you, just orders. I stared at the phone, the black screen reflecting my own tired eyes. Beside me, Mateo sighed, a sound that carried the weight of 1,000 similar insults. "I can park down the block, Jen. It's fine," Mateo said, his voice void of anger, which somehow made me angrier. "I don't want to cause trouble on your mom's birthday." "No," I said, a sudden sharpness in my tone surprising even me. "You are parking in the driveway, right next to his leased Lexus." "Jen, I mean it, Mateo." I turned to look out the window, watching the suburban landscape of Connecticut roll by. They didn't know. None of them knew. For the last 10 years, my family has looked at me and seen Jennifer, the disappointment, the daughter who didn't marry a doctor or a lawyer, the daughter who settled for a carpenter, the daughter who worked a boring administrative job while David was out there chasing big dreams and building empires. To them, I was the black sheep, the invisible one. The one useful only for running errands, buying ice, and sitting quietly in the corner while David regaled the room with stories of his latest business ventures that usually ended with him asking Mom for a bridge loan. But here is the truth they missed while they were too busy staring at themselves in the mirror. I wasn't just an administrator. I was the owner of Sunrise Holdings, LLC. 10 years ago, when my father died, he left behind a mountain of debt that threatened to swallow my mother whole. The bank was weeks away from foreclosing on the family estate, the sprawling colonial mansion that defined my mother's identity. David was nowhere to be found, busy finding himself in Europe. I stepped in. I used every cent of my savings, took out loans, and worked 3 jobs to buy the debt. I restructured everything. I bought the house through my LLC to protect it from creditors. I let my mother believe that Dad had a secret virtual trust that kicked in to save her. I let her believe the monthly stipend she received came from that trust. I let David believe the house he moved back into, rent-free, was his birthright. I did it to save their pride. I did it because I loved them. But love, I was learning, has a shelf life when it's fed nothing but disrespect. "You're squeezing the door handle pretty hard there, mi amor," Mateo joked weakly. I looked down. My knuckles were white. "I'm just tired, Mateo. I'm tired of the way they look at you, like you're invisible, like you're—" "The help?" he finished for me. "It's okay. I know who I am. I know what we have." He reached over and covered my hand with his. His palm was warm, rough like sandpaper, and incredibly grounding. He was the most hard-working, honest man I had ever known. He built things with his hands. He created value. He didn't manipulate. He didn't lie, and he certainly didn't pretend to be something he wasn't, unlike David. "Just promise me one thing," I whispered as we turned into the wealthy enclave of my childhood. "If they say anything to you today, anything disrespectful, don't just take it, please." Mateo smiled sadly. "It's your mother's 70th birthday, Jen. I'm not going to start a war." I looked at the passing houses, manicured lawns, and high fences. A war? No, Mateo wouldn't start a war. But as we pulled up to the wrought iron gates of the house, my house, I felt a shift deep inside my chest. A clicking sound, like a safety being toggled off on a loaded weapon. Mateo might not start a war, but I was beginning to think that I might end one. The gravel crunched loudly under the tires of the Ford as we pulled into the long, winding driveway. The house loomed ahead, a majestic white colonial with black shutters and a wraparound porch. It was beautiful. It was intimidating. And every single beam, every brick, every square inch of the landscaping belonged to me. But to the people inside, I was just a guest, a barely tolerated one. David's silver Lexus was parked prominently in the center, angled aggressively as if to say, "Look at me." Next to it was a red Mercedes convertible, my mother's car, which I knew for a fact was 3 months behind on payments because the notices came to my P.O. box, not hers. "Park right there," I pointed to the spot directly beside the Lexus. Mateo hesitated, then parked. The contrast was almost comical. The dusty, dented work truck next to the polished, leased luxury sedan. It was a visual representation of our lives, substance versus flash, reality versus illusion. As we climbed out, carrying the bags of ice and the heavy cases of beer, the front door swung open. It wasn't my mother who greeted us. It was Ashley, David's wife. She stood there in a silk cocktail dress that likely cost more than Mateo's entire wardrobe, holding a glass of Chardonnay. She looked us up and down, her nose wrinkling slightly, as if she smelled something unpleasant. "Finally," she sighed, not stepping aside to help. "David was about to send someone to the store. You guys are late." "Hello, Ashley," I said, brushing past her with the beer. "Nice to see you too." "Careful with those boots," she snapped at Mateo as he stepped onto the polished hardwood of the foyer. "We just had the floors waxed. David spent a fortune on them." I almost laughed out loud. David hadn't spent a dime. The maintenance fees for the house came out of the account I managed. I had paid for the floor waxing, but I bit my tongue. Not yet. We walked into the kitchen, which was bustling with caterers. My mother, Patricia, was holding court in the center of the room, looking regal in a navy blue gown. She was laughing at something David was saying. David, leaning against the marble island, held a scotch in one hand and gestured wildly with the other. So I told the investors, "Look, you want in on the ground floor of the next crypto boom? You stick with me. We're talking 300% returns by Q3, David boomed. He spotted us. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Ah, the mule has arrived," he announced, raising his glass. The room chuckled. A few of his business friends turned to look at Mateo, their eyes glazed with amused condescension. "Happy birthday, Mom," I said, walking over to kiss her cheek. She offered me her cheek without turning fully toward me. "You're late, Jennifer." "And did you bring the napkins?" "The linen ones I asked for." "I brought the ice and the beer, Mom, like David asked." "Well, someone needs to run back out for napkins," she said dismissively, turning back to David. "Go on, honey. Tell them about the boat." I stood there, invisible again. Mateo quietly placed the beer in the cooler and began arranging the ice. He was being helpful. He was being good. And they were treating him like furniture. "Hey, amigo," David called out to Mateo. "Since you're near the fridge, grab me a refill, will you? And cut a lime wedge, thin." The room went silent for a beat. This wasn't asking a family member for a favor. This was an order to a servant. Mateo froze. I saw his jaw clench. The muscles in his forearm tightened as he gripped the bag of ice. "Get it yourself, David," I said. My voice was low, but it carried. David blinked, feigning shock. "Excuse me?" I said, "Get it yourself. Mateo isn't your waiter." My mother turned, her eyes flashing with irritation. "Jennifer, don't start drama. Not on my birthday. David is entertaining guests. Mateo is, well, he's right there. It's just a drink." "It's about respect, Mom," I said, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. "Respect?" David laughed, a harsh barking sound. "Respect is earned, Jen. When your husband can afford a suit that doesn't smell like sawdust, maybe he can sit with the big boys. Until then, cutting a lime won't kill him." I stepped forward, ready to unleash a decade of suppressed rage, but Mateo touched my arm. "It's fine, Jen," he said softly, his eyes pleading with me. "It's fine." He cut the lime. He poured the drink. He handed it to David. David took it with a smirk, not even looking at Mateo. "Good man. Maybe later I'll let you look at the deck out back. Needs some work. I'll give you a friends and family rate on the labor." The laughter that followed was the ugliest sound I had ever heard. It wasn't joyful. It was exclusionary. It was the sound of a predator toying with prey. I looked at my mother. She was sipping her wine, smiling. She wasn't embarrassed by her son's behavior. She was proud of his dominance. In that moment, the love I had been holding on to, the desperate need to protect them, to save their pride, to keep the family together, began to curdle. It turned into something sour, something heavy. I looked around the kitchen I had paid for, the appliances I had bought, the wine they were drinking, which I had likely funded through the trust allowance. Enjoy it, I thought, a cold shiver running down my spine. Enjoy the ice, because winter is coming. The dining room was a masterpiece of old-world wealth. The mahogany table, which seated 12, was set with the finest china, grandmother's Wedgwood, which I had personally retrieved from the pawn shop 3 years ago when my mother had misplaced it, meaning pawned it for gambling money. Crystal glasses sparkled under the chandelier light. Everyone took their places. David sat at the head of the table, naturally, displacing our late father's seat. My mother sat at the other end. The guests, David's sycophantic friends and business partners, filled the sides. Mateo and I were the last to approach. There were 2 empty chairs near the middle. As Mateo reached for the back of the chair next to me, David cleared his throat. It was a loud, exaggerated sound, designed to stop conversation. "Whoa, hold on there," David said, pointing a fork at Mateo. Mateo paused. "What's wrong?" "We're a bit tight on space," David said, gesturing to the table, which clearly had ample room. "And honestly, we're going to be discussing some high-level business strategy tonight. Estate planning, asset allocation, complex stuff." He paused for effect, looking around the table to ensure he had an audience. "I don't want you to feel uncomfortable, Mateo," David continued, his voice dripping with faux concern. "You know, being out of your depth. Plus, Mom's new carpet is Persian silk. We can't really risk, sawdust or whatever is on those boots." "I changed my boots, David," Mateo said, his voice steady but strained. "It's a metaphor, buddy," David chuckled. Then his face hardened. The mask slipped. "Look, let's be real. The main table is for family and the inner circle. The help usually eats in the kitchen. It's more appropriate. You'll be more comfortable there. Grab a plate, go hang out with the caterers. They speak Spanish, right? You'll have a blast." The silence that followed was deafening. It was a physical blow. I looked at the guests. Some looked down at their plates, uncomfortable. Others, the ones trying to impress David, snickered. I looked at my mother. This was the moment. This was the moment a mother steps in. This was the moment she says, "David, stop it. Mateo is family." I locked eyes with her. "Mom," I whispered. Patricia looked at Mateo, then at me. She dabbed the corner of her mouth with a linen napkin. "Well, Jennifer," she said, her voice light and airy, "David does have a point. It is a bit crowded, and you know how sensitive the carpet is. Maybe it would be better if Mateo ate in the kitchen, just for tonight. Don't make a scene, dear." Don't make a scene. That was the phrase that had ruled my life. Don't make a scene when Dad gambled away the college fund. Don't make a scene when David stole my first car to go joyriding and wrecked it. Don't make a scene when I paid off the credit cards they maxed out in my name. My heart hammered against my ribs. It wasn't a fast rhythm. It was a slow, heavy thud, like a war drum. I looked at Mateo. He was standing tall, but his eyes were filled with a profound humiliation, not for himself, but for me. He was humiliated that his wife came from people like this. "I see," Mateo said quietly. He started to turn away. "I'll go to the truck." "No," I said. The word hung in the air. David stopped chewing. "Excuse me?" I reached out and grabbed Mateo's hand, pulling him back. I said no, he's not going to the truck, and he's certainly not eating in the kitchen. "Jennifer," Mother warned, her tone dropping an octave. "Sit down. You're embarrassing yourself." "I'm embarrassing myself?" I laughed. It was a dry, brittle sound. "You people, you have no idea, do you? You sit here in your fancy clothes, drinking your imported wine, pretending you're royalty." "Sit down!" David slammed his hand on the table. The crystal glasses jumped. "You're ruining Mom's night. If your husband isn't smart enough to know his place, that's his problem. Now sit down and shut up, or you can join him in the kitchen." I looked at David. I looked at the house around him. I looked at the food he was eating. I realized then that I had created a monster. By shielding them from the consequences of their financial incompetence, I hadn't saved them. I had enabled them. I had fed their arrogance with my own blood and sweat. I looked at Mateo. "Give me the keys." "Jen?" "The keys to the truck, Mateo. We're leaving." "Good," David shouted. "Go, and don't come crawling back when you need money for rent. Don't come asking me for a loan when that truck breaks down." I turned to face him one last time. The room was spinning with adrenaline, but my mind was crystal clear. "I won't come back asking for money, David," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I promise you that." "Get out," he screamed, his face purple. "You're not family. You're nothing." I took Mateo's hand and we walked out. We walked past the shocked caterers. We walked out the heavy oak front door. We walked across the porch and onto the gravel driveway. The night air was cool. I inhaled deeply, filling my lungs with oxygen. "Jen, I'm so sorry," Mateo said as we reached the truck. "I ruined the party." I stopped and looked at him. I cupped his face in my hands. "You didn't ruin anything, Mateo. You just woke me up." I pulled out my phone. My hands weren't shaking anymore. "Who are you calling?" Mateo asked. "Henderson," I said, "my lawyer." "On a Saturday night?" "He'll answer for me," I said, dialing the number. "It's time, Mateo. It's time to collect." The drive home was silent, but it wasn't the heavy silence of the arrival. It was the charged silence of a strategy room before a strike. The headlights of the Ford cut through the darkness, illuminating the trees that lined the highway. "Execute Protocol Omega," I said into the phone speaker. Attorney Henderson's voice was groggy, but it sharpened instantly. "Omega? Jennifer, are you sure? That's the nuclear option. That means total liquidation of the arrangement, eviction, debt collection, the works. I'm sure, I said, watching the dashed white lines on the road flash by. They told Mateo to eat in the kitchen, Henderson. My mother, she smiled. A pause on the other end. Henderson had been my father's attorney, but he had switched allegiance to me the day I walked into his office 10 years ago with a check to save the estate. He knew everything. He despised David. I'll have the paperwork drafted by Monday morning, Henderson said, his tone shifting to professional steel. Do you want to give them a warning, a grace period? No, I said. David told me I wasn't family. He told me I was nothing. So, treat them like strangers. If a stranger was living in my property without a lease, destroying the assets and abusing the landlord, what would we do? We would evict them immediately, Henderson said, and we would sue for back damages. Do it, I said. And Henderson, the virtual trust stipend? Yes. Cut it. Tonight. Freeze the accounts. Cancel the credit cards attached to the LLC. Patricia is going to panic, Jennifer. Her lifestyle. Her lifestyle is funded by my salary and my investments, I cut in. She chose her side. She chose the golden child. Let the golden child pay for her Mercedes. Understood. See you at 8 a.m. Monday. I hung up. Mateo was looking at me with wide eyes. He knew I owned the debt, but he didn't know the extent of the legal stranglehold I had on them. I had kept the details fuzzy to protect him from the burden. Jen, he said softly, are you okay? I don't feel sad, Mateo, I said, surprised by the truth of my own words. I feel light. I feel like I've been carrying a backpack full of rocks for 10 years, and I just dropped it. I looked out the window. For years, I had believed that being a good daughter meant setting myself on fire to keep them warm. I thought that if I just gave enough, paid enough, fixed enough, eventually they would love me. Eventually, they would respect me. But the snap had happened. It wasn't a breakdown. It was a breakthrough. The emotional tether that bound me to their approval had snapped. I looked at my brother and didn't see a formidable businessman. I saw a parasite. I looked at my mother and didn't see a matriarch. I saw a coward. I started making a mental list. Item 1, the house. Title is held by Sunrise Holdings, LLC. Item 2, the condo David rents out and keeps the money. Also Sunrise Holdings. Item 3, the Mercedes, leased under the company name. Item 4, the credit cards. They're going to hate you, Mateo said, turning into our driveway, our modest, clean, fully paid for, split-level home. They already hate me, Mateo, I replied, unbuckling my seatbelt. They just hated me while using me. Now they're going to hate me while they're homeless. I prefer the second option. We walked inside our house. It smelled like lemon oil and peace. No screaming. No posturing, just us. I went to my home office, a small room off the kitchen, and opened the safe. Inside was the doomsday file. I had prepared it years ago, just in case. I pulled out the thick binder. It contained the deed to the mansion, the promissory notes signed by my mother, which she thought were just formalities for the trust, the logs of every repair bill, every tax payment, every insurance premium I had paid since 2014. It was a mountain of evidence. It was my shield, and it was my sword. I flipped to the section on David. I had been tracking his business dealings too. I knew about the failed crypto exchange. I knew about the investors he was scamming. But there was something I needed to confirm. I logged into the bank portal for the LLC. I navigated to the sub-account I had set up for property maintenance, the one account my mother had viewing access to, so she could feel involved. My breath hitched. What is it? Mateo asked, bringing me a cup of tea. Look at this, I pointed at the screen. There was a withdrawal 2 weeks ago, $50,000. Home equity line of credit, Mateo read, but only you can authorize that. My mother has power of attorney for emergency repairs only, I whispered, my blood turning to ice. The memo says roof repair. The roof was replaced last year, Mateo said. I did it myself. Exactly. I clicked on the transfer details. The money hadn't gone to a contractor. It had been transferred to an external account, D. Miller Ventures. David. My mother had forged authorization to pull $50,000 of equity out of my house to give to David. That wasn't just ingratitude. That was theft. That was fraud. I closed the laptop. The last tiny shred of guilt I felt about evicting them vanished. He stole from us, I said, my voice trembling not with sadness, but with fury. He stole equity from the house I saved. What are you going to do? Mateo asked. I looked at him. I'm not just going to evict him, Mateo. I'm going to destroy him. Monday morning, 8 a.m. The air in Henderson's office was stale, smelling of old paper and expensive coffee. Henderson, a man in his 60s with silver hair and eyes that had seen every type of family dispute imaginable, sat across from me. He adjusted his glasses and looked at the printout I had brought. This is problematic, he said, tapping the bank transfer record. $50,000, unauthorized. It's fraud, Henderson, I said. My mother signed off on it, but the beneficiary is David. She knew what she was doing. She liquidated equity in a property she doesn't own to fund his gambling or whatever scam he's running. Technically, Henderson said, playing devil's advocate, you gave her limited power of attorney for repairs. She could argue she thought it was a necessary expense. For a roof that was replaced 6 months ago, no judge will buy that. Henderson nodded. Agreed. So, here is the situation. Sunrise Holdings, LLC is the sole owner of the estate. Your mother and brother are tenants at will. There is no lease. They have paid 0 rent for 120 months. He slid a calculator across the desk. Fair market rent for a property of that size in that zip code is roughly $4,500 a month. Over 10 years, plus interest, plus the unauthorized withdrawal, plus the credit card debt. They owe me over $500,000, I calculated. Conservatively, Henderson said. Now, about the eviction. In our state, since they are family and have lived there for so long, we have to follow strict procedure to avoid a wrongful eviction suit. We need to serve them a 30-day notice to quit, but given the fraud, he pulled out a separate file. We can file for an emergency restraining order and an immediate eviction based on waste and destruction of property. The unauthorized HELOC withdrawal counts as damaging the asset. Do it, I said. This will get ugly, Jennifer. David will fight. He'll claim he has squatter's rights or that the house was a gift. Let him claim whatever he wants, I said, opening my binder. I have the receipts. I laid them out on the table. Receipt 1. The wire transfer from my personal savings account in 2014, paying off the arrears to stop the bank foreclosure. Receipt 2. The signed agreement where my mother acknowledged that Sunrise Holdings, me, was buying the house, and she was allowed to live there as a guest. Receipt 3. 10 years of property tax payments from my account. Receipt 4. The email chain from 3 years ago where David acknowledged he was staying at Mom's place temporarily, proving he knew he didn't own it. Henderson whistled low. You kept everything. I knew this day would come, I said. Deep down, I always knew David would try to take it from me. I just didn't think Mom would help him hold the gun. Okay, Henderson said, gathering the papers. I'll have the process server deliver the notices tomorrow morning. But there's one more thing. What? I ran a background check on D. Miller Ventures, the account the $50,000 went to. He slid a folder across the desk. It's not a business account, Jen. It's a joint account. I opened the folder. The names on the account were David Miller and Kayla Vance. Who is Kayla Vance? I asked. His wife's name is Ashley. Kayla Vance is a 24-year-old bottle service waitress in the city, Henderson said dryly. And judging by these transaction records, David isn't investing in crypto. He's paying for a luxury apartment in downtown for Miss Vance. My jaw dropped. He took $50,000 of my equity, my mother's security, to set up a love nest for his mistress? It appears so, Henderson said. And here's the kicker. Ashley, David's wife, just co-signed a car loan for him last week. She has no idea he's broke. She thinks he's flush with cash. I sat back in the leather chair. The level of betrayal was staggering. David wasn't just a jerk. He was a sociopath. He was stealing from his mother, cheating on his wife, and spitting on his sister, all while pretending to be the king of the world. This is ammunition, I said, tapping the file. It is, Henderson agreed, but be careful how you use it. If you reveal this to Ashley, she might turn on him, or she might shoot the messenger. Denial is a powerful drug. I don't care if she believes me or not, I said, standing up. I'm not doing this to save Ashley. I'm doing this to reclaim my life. Draft the papers, Henderson. Serve them all. The mom, the brother, the sister-in-law. Everyone gets a notice. And the specific charge? I looked at the window, watching the city below. Theft, fraud, and trespassing. I want them out of my house. Tuesday, the calm before the explosion. I went to work at my day job, manager of operations for a mid-sized logistics firm. It was the job my family mocked. Paper pusher, David called me. But this job taught me how to organize, how to track logistics, and how to spot inefficiencies. David was the inefficiency I was about to eliminate. My phone sat on my desk, silent. The process server was scheduled to arrive at the mansion at 11 a.m. 10:55 a.m. I stared at the clock. 10:58 a.m. 11 a.m. I imagined the scene. The doorbell ringing, the heavy chimes echoing through the foyer. My mother, perhaps in her robe, expecting a package from Amazon or a flower delivery. David, maybe nursing a hangover, yelling, "Who is it?" 11:05 a.m. My phone lit up. Caller ID, Mom. I let it ring. Caller ID, Mom. Caller ID, David. Caller ID, David. Caller ID, Ashley. The screen was flashing like a strobe light. My heart was racing, not with fear, but with adrenaline. It was happening. The reality distortion field they had lived in for a decade had just been shattered by a man in a cheap suit handing them a stack of legal papers. I put the phone on Do Not Disturb and turned it face down. I had work to do. At lunch, I met Mateo near his job site. He was sitting on the tailgate of his truck, eating a sandwich. He looked tired. "They're calling," I said, sitting next to him. "Me too," he said, showing me his phone. "David sent me a text." He handed me the phone. "David, tell your crazy wife to call off her dogs. This is a sick joke. Does she want Mom to have a heart attack? Fix this, Mateo, or you're done." "Or I'm done?" Mateo laughed, shaking his head. "He still thinks he has power over me." "He's scared," I said. "Bullies get loud when they're scared." "Jen, are you sure about the house?" Mateo asked. "Where will your mom go?" "She has her pension," I said. "It's small, but it's enough for a senior apartment. And she has the jewelry, unless she pawned that too. Look, Mateo, if I don't do this, they will drain us dry. That $50,000 was just the beginning. Next, they'd forge my signature on a sale deed. They'd sell the house out from under us." Mateo nodded slowly. You're right. It's just hard to watch. It's about to get harder, I warned him. They're going to come for us, physically. I went back to the office. I informed the receptionist at the front desk. If anyone named David Miller or Patricia Miller comes here, do not let them in. Call security immediately. The receptionist, a sweet girl named Sarah, looked alarmed. Is everything okay, Jennifer? Just a family dispute, I said, but he can be volatile. I spent the afternoon reviewing the PI's report on David again. The details were nauseating. Not only was he paying for the mistress, but he was also gambling online. Thousands of dollars a week. He was bleeding money, my money. At 3 p.m., a voicemail popped up. It was my mother. I decided to listen to it. Jennifer, how dare you? A sheriff came to the door. He gave us an eviction notice. It says we have 3 days to vacate due to criminal activity. Are you insane? This is my house. Your father left it to me. Call me back right now and tell this lawyer to stop, or I will write you out of the will. Do you hear me? You are ungrateful, spiteful. Her voice cracked at the end, not with tears, but with sheer, unadulterated rage. Write me out of the will. The threat made me laugh out loud in my quiet office. Mom, I whispered to the empty room, there is no will. There is no estate. There is only debt, and I'm the only thing standing between you and the street. She still didn't get it. She truly believed the lie I had constructed to save her dignity. She believed she was rich. It was tragic. It was pathetic. And it was over. I drafted a text to the group chat. Mom, David, Ashley. Me. All communication must go through my attorney, Mr. Henderson. Do not contact me, Mateo, or my workplace. Any further harassment will be met with a restraining order. The eviction stands. I hit send. Then I blocked them all. But as I packed up my bag to leave for the day, I had a sinking feeling. David wasn't the type to listen to lawyers. David was the type who thought rules didn't apply to him. He wouldn't call. He would show up. Wednesday was surprisingly quiet. The calm had returned, but it was heavier now. I received an update from Henderson. They haven't packed a single box, Henderson told me over the phone. My source, a neighbor, says the cars are still in the driveway. They're hunkering down. They think I'm bluffing, I said. Likely, or they are delusional. David called my office this morning. He tried to fire me. I chuckled. He tried to fire my lawyer? Yes. He claimed he was the head of the household and that I was acting without proper authority. He demanded to see the trust documents. I told him there is no trust, only an LLC. He screamed that I was a liar and hung up. He's in denial, I said. He can't accept that his little sister owns the roof over his head. Jennifer, I need to warn you. Henderson's voice dropped. When reality hits a narcissist, the reaction is usually extinction burst. It's a psychological term. They escalate their behavior to the maximum level to try and regain control. Be careful. I have cameras at my house, I said, and I carry pepper spray. Good. That night, Mateo and I stayed in. We watched a movie, trying to distract ourselves. But every time a car drove down our street, we both flinched. This is no way to live, Mateo said, peering through the blinds. It ends soon, I promised. The emergency hearing is Friday. Once the judge sees the fraud evidence, the sheriff will physically remove them. Do you think your mom knows? Mateo asked. About the mistress? About the gambling? I don't know. Mom has a talent for selective blindness. She sees what she wants to see. She sees David the business tycoon, not David the thief. I pulled up the security feed from the mansion. I had installed the system years ago, paying the monthly subscription, of course. I saw them in the living room. My mother was pacing. Ashley was sitting on the sofa, looking pale. David was on the phone, gesturing wildly. He looked manic. Suddenly, on the camera feed, David threw a vase against the wall. It shattered. Ashley jumped up. My mother rushed to him, hugging him, comforting him. I felt a pang of old hurt. Even when he was destroying the house, she comforted him. When I saved the house, she ignored me. "Look at them," I whispered. "They're unraveling." "Jen," Mateo said, pointing at the screen, "who is that?" A car had pulled up in the driveway of the mansion, a small red sedan. A young woman stepped out. She was wearing a short skirt and high heels. "That's Kayla," I gasped. "The mistress." He invited his mistress to the house while his wife is there? No, look at her face. She's angry. We watched in silence as the drama unfolded on the tiny screen. Kayla banged on the front door. David opened it. There was shouting. No audio, but the body language was clear. Then, chaos. Ashley slapped David. Kayla shoved Ashley. My mother tried to intervene and got pushed aside. "Oh my God," Mateo whispered. "It's a telenovela." "It's the collapse," I said. "The checks must have bounced. David probably promised Kayla money he couldn't access because I froze the accounts." David slammed the door in Kayla's face. She kicked the door, then got in her car and sped off. Ashley was now screaming at David in the driveway. She threw her ring at him. "He's losing everything," I said. "His wife, his side piece, his money, his house." "And he's going to blame you for all of it," Mateo said grimly. He was right. In David's mind, none of this was his fault. It wasn't his fault he stole or cheated or lied. It was my fault for turning off the money tap. I turned off the iPad. "I'm going to sleep. I have a big presentation tomorrow." But I didn't sleep well. I dreamed of wolves. They were scratching at my door, dressed in suits, demanding to be let in. Thursday morning, the day of the ambush. I was in my office at work, preparing for a meeting with the regional director. My desk was covered in charts and logistics maps. I felt safe here. This was my domain. At 10:30 a.m., I heard a commotion in the hallway. "Sir, you can't go back there, sir." It was Sarah, the receptionist. Her voice was high-pitched, panicked. "Get out of my way! I'm her brother!" My blood ran cold. The wolf was here. I stood up just as the door to my office flew open. It slammed against the wall with a crack that shook the framed diplomas. David stood there. He looked deranged. His suit was rumpled, his tie was loose, and his eyes were bloodshot. He looked like he hadn't slept in 2 days. "You," he seethed, pointing a shaking finger at me. "You vicious little bitch." "David," I said, keeping my voice calm, moving behind my desk to put a barrier between us. "You are trespassing. Get out." "Trespassing?" He laughed, a manic, jagged sound. "You ruin my life. You humiliate Mom. You destroy my marriage. And you talk to me about trespassing?" He stepped into the room. He was big, 6'2". He used his size to intimidate. It had worked when we were kids. It wouldn't work now. "I didn't destroy your marriage, David. You did that when you spent my equity on your mistress," I said, my hand inching toward the landline phone. "You froze the accounts," he screamed, spit flying from his mouth. "Kayla's check bounced. Ashley saw the bank alerts. You set me up." "I stopped you from stealing," I yelled back. "That money wasn't yours. The house isn't yours." "It's Mom's house. Dad left it to her." "Dad left her debt." I slammed my hand on the desk. "Dad left her bankrupt. I bought the debt. I own the house. I own the car. I own the shirt on your back because I paid the credit card bill for it." David stopped. He looked stunned. The reality was trying to break through, but his ego was fighting it. "You're lying," he whispered. "You're just a secretary." You're a nobody. You couldn't afford that estate. I run a multi-million-dollar logistics division, David, and I invest in real estate. While you were playing pretend businessman, I was building actual wealth. He looked around my office. He really looked at it for the first time. He saw the awards. He saw the title on the door, Director of Operations. His face twisted. Envy. Pure, unadulterated envy. You think you're better than me? He growled, stepping closer. You think you can embarrass me in front of my family, in front of my wife? Security! I yelled, listing the phone. David lunged. He reached across the desk and grabbed the phone cord, ripping it out of the wall. You're going to fix this, he hissed, leaning over the desk, his face inches from mine. I could smell the stale scotch on his breath. You're going to call Henderson. You're going to reinstate the trust. You're going to transfer $50,000 to my account today, or I swear to God, Jennifer. Or what? I asked, looking him dead in the eye. Or I'll make you regret it. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst, but I didn't flinch. Look up, David, I said calmly. What? Look up. He glanced at the ceiling. In the corner, a red light blinked on the black dome of the security camera. Everything you just did, I said, breaking into a secure facility, destroying property, threatening an employee, attempted extortion, it's all recorded, in high definition, with audio. David's face went pale. And, I continued, Sarah already pressed the panic button under the front desk. The police are probably in the elevator right now. As on cue, sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. David backed away. You trapped me. No, David, you trapped yourself. I just turned on the lights. 2 security guards appeared at the door, batons drawn. Ma'am, is everything okay? Escort this man out, I said, smoothing my blouse, and hold him for the police. I want to press charges. David looked at me one last time. The arrogance was gone. In its place was fear, real fear. Jen, please, he stammered. Don't do this. I'm your brother. I looked at him. I remembered him sneering at Mateo. I remembered him calling me a mule. My brother died a long time ago, I said coldly. You're just a tenant, and you're evicted. The police escorted David out of my building in handcuffs. It was a sight that should have broken my heart. He was my big brother. I remembered him teaching me how to ride a bike. I remembered him protecting me from a neighborhood dog when I was 6. But those memories felt like they belonged to a different lifetime, like scenes from a movie I watched once and barely recalled. The man screaming profanities as he was shoved into the back of a squad car wasn't my protector. He was a stranger who had consumed my brother from the inside out. I didn't press charges for assault, though I could have. I settled for a restraining order and a trespassing violation. Why? Because jail was too easy. In jail, he could play the victim. He could tell everyone how his evil sister framed him. No, I needed him out in the real world to face the consequences of his own mediocrity. 2 days later, the summit took place. It was held in the conference room of Henderson's law firm. This was the deadline. The 72-hour emergency notice had expired. Today, they either signed the voluntary surrender of the property or the sheriff would execute the removal order at noon. I sat at the head of the long glass table. Mateo was on my right, his hand resting calmly on the table. He wore a clean button-down shirt, looking more dignified than anyone else in the room. On the other side sat the ruins of my family. David was there, looking shrunken. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a jittery, nervous energy. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Mom sat next to him, clutching her pearls, looking pale and aged. She kept glancing at the door as if expecting someone to come save her. And then there was Ashley. She sat a few feet away from David, her arms crossed, her eyes red and swollen. The alliance was fractured. "Let's make this simple," Henderson began, opening a file folder. "My client, Jennifer Gomez, through her entity Sunrise Holdings LLC, is exercising her right to reclaim possession of the property located at 44 Oakwood Drive. You have until 12 p.m. today to vacate." "This is ridiculous," Mom whispered, her voice trembling. "Jennifer, please, you can't do this. Where will I go? That house is my life. Your father built it." "Dad didn't build it, Mom," I said, my voice steady. "He bought it, and then he mortgaged it, and then he lost it. I saved it. For 10 years, I have paid every bill while you treated me like an ATM and treated my husband like a servant." "Where's family?" David snapped, though his voice lacked its usual thunder. "You don't treat family like a business transaction." "You're right," I said. "Family doesn't steal from family. Family doesn't take $50,000 of equity to fund a secret life." I slid a new document across the table. It wasn't a legal brief. It was a bank statement, highlighted in neon yellow. Ashley looked at it. She frowned. Then she picked it up. "What is this?" Ashley asked, her voice raspy. "That," I said, pointing at David, "is where the roof repair money went. It didn't go to a contractor. It went to an apartment lease in the city for a Miss Kayla Vance." The room went silent. The air conditioning hummed, sounding like a jet engine in the quiet. David turned white. "Jen, don't." "And here," I slid a second paper, "are the credit card statements. The diamond earrings you thought David bought you for your anniversary, Ashley? He bought a matching pair for Kayla 2 days later, using Mom's credit card." Ashley looked at David. The expression on her face wasn't anger. It was disgust, pure, unadulterated revulsion. "Is this true?" she whispered. "Baby, she's manipulating the data," David stammered, reaching for her hand. "You know how she is. She's jealous of us. She's trying to divide us." Ashley pulled her hand away as if she had been burned. She stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I co-signed your car loan," she said, her voice rising. "I emptied my savings to pay your investors last month because you said it was a temporary liquidity issue. You told me the business was booming." "It is. It will be," David pleaded. "You're broke," I said, delivering the final blow. "He's not just broke, Ashley. He is negative. He has gambled away the family safety net. If I hadn't stepped in and frozen the accounts, he would have sold the house out from under Mom within a year." Mom made a sound like a wounded animal. She looked at her golden child. For the first time, the shine was gone. She didn't see the prodigy she had worshipped. She saw a middle-aged man who had stolen her security to sleep with a waitress. "David," Mom whispered, "tell me she's lying. Tell me you didn't take the roof money." David looked at Mom, then at Ashley, then at me. Cornered, he did what narcissists always do. He attacked. "It's your fault," he screamed at Mom. "You pushed me. You always wanted me to be the big man. You wanted the lifestyle. You wanted the parties. I had to keep up appearances. I did it for you." "You stole from me," Mom said, tears streaming down her face. "I defended you. I kicked Jennifer out of my house for you." "And now you're both homeless," I said coldly. "Henderson, give them the papers." Henderson pushed the voluntary surrender forms forward. "Sign," I ordered. "Sign, and I won't sue you for the $50,000 fraud. I will absorb the loss as the price of getting you out of my life. Don't sign, and the sheriff arrests you for fraud at 12:01 p.m. Ashley was the first to move. She didn't sign. She simply grabbed her purse. "I'm filing for divorce," she said to David. "Don't come to my parents' house. If you come near me, I'll call the police." She walked out. She didn't look at me. She didn't need to. Her exit was my vindication. David slumped in his chair, defeated. Mom was sobbing into her hands. "Sign it," I said. With shaking hands, David signed. Then Mom signed. I took the papers. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel sadness. I felt the clean, sharp sensation of a surgical cut removing a tumor. "You have 2 hours to get your personal items," I said, standing up. "The locks change at noon." Noon. The sun was high and bright, casting harsh shadows over the driveway of the mansion. A locksmith van was already parked next to my truck. The sheriff's deputy stood by his cruiser, arms crossed, watching the scene with indifferent eyes. He was there to keep the peace, but his presence was the ultimate symbol of my authority. I stood on the lawn, watching the end of an era. David was throwing boxes into the back of his leased Lexus, which I knew was about to be repossessed since I'd stopped making the payments. He looked frantic. He was sweating through his shirt, tossing expensive suits and golf clubs into the trunk haphazardly. Mom was slower. She walked out the front door, carrying a small box of photos and her jewelry case. She looked small. The grandeur she had worn like a cloak for 70 years had evaporated. Without the house, without the status, without the successful son narrative, she was just an elderly woman who had made terrible choices. She stopped when she saw me. "Jennifer," she said. Her voice was weak. "The movers will bring the furniture to storage," I said, not moving toward her. "I've paid for 3 months of storage. After that, it's your responsibility." "You're really doing this?" she asked, looking back at the house. "You're kicking your mother out on the street?" "I found you an apartment, Mom," I said. "It's a 1-bedroom in the senior living complex on 5th Street. I paid the first 6 months of rent. It's clean, it's safe, it's what you can actually afford." "5th Street?" she gasped. That's working class. None of my friends live there." "Your friends liked you for the parties and the pool, Mom," I said brutally. "If they're real friends, they won't care where you live. If they care, they aren't your friends." She looked at me with a mix of anger and shame. "I don't understand you. You're so cold. You have so much, and you won't share." "I shared everything," I shouted, my composure cracking for just a second. "I gave you 10 years of my life. I gave you hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you spat in my face. You let David humiliate my husband." I pointed at Mateo, who was standing by the truck, silent and strong. "That man," I said, "is worth 10 of David. He works, he loves, he respects, and you treated him like garbage because he doesn't wear a suit. Well, guess what, Mom? The suit didn't pay the mortgage. The work boots did." Mom looked at Mateo. For the first time, she didn't look through him. She looked at him. She saw the man who had silently fixed her roof, mowed her lawn, and parked down the street to save her ego. She lowered her eyes. David slammed the trunk of his car. He walked over to us, his face twisted in a sneer. Even in defeat, he tried to be the alpha. "You think you won?" he spat. "You're pathetic. You're going to die alone in this big, empty house. Nobody loves you, Jen. They just use you." I laughed. It was a genuine, hearty laugh. "That's projection, David." "That's what you do. You use people. Mateo loves me. My friends love me. My team at work respects me because I bring value. You're a parasite that just lost its host." "Mr. Miller," the sheriff called out, stepping forward. "It's 12:05. You need to leave the property, now." David looked at the sheriff, then at me. He opened his mouth to say something, probably another insult, but he saw the look in my eyes. It was the look of someone who held the deed, the mortgage, and the power. He got in his car. He didn't even wait for Mom. He revved the engine and peeled out of the driveway, gravel spraying everywhere. He left his mother standing there with a box of photos. The ultimate betrayal. When the ship sank, the golden child took the lifeboat and left the captain to drown. Mom watched his taillights disappear. Her shoulders slumped. The denial finally broke. She realized, in that dusty driveway, that she had bet on the wrong horse. "He left me," she whispered. "Yes," I said. "He did." "I need a ride," she said, her voice trembling. "To the apartment." I looked at Mateo. He nodded. He was a better person than them. He was a better person than me sometimes. "Put your box in the truck, Mom," I said. "Mateo will drive you." "You're not coming?" she asked. "No," I said, turning back to the house. "I have to change the locks." I watched as my mother climbed into the passenger seat of the beat-up Ford truck she had despised. She sat next to the man she had banished to the kitchen. As they drove away, I walked up the steps to the front porch. I took the key, my key, and unlocked the door. I walked into the foyer. It was silent. The ghosts of the party, the insults, the years of neglect, they were all still there, lingering in the air. But then the locksmith drilled into the deadbolt, the loud mechanical whine shattering the silence. Rear! The sound of the old lock being destroyed, the sound of the past being drilled out. I took a deep breath. The air smelled different. It didn't smell like fear anymore. It smelled like ownership. The weeks that followed were a masterclass in karma. In small towns, gossip travels faster than light, and nothing travels faster than the fall of a prominent family. The story of the eviction, the police, and the mistress spread like wildfire. I didn't have to say a word. The neighbors had seen everything. The locksmith, the sheriff, the screaming match in the driveway. It was all public theater. David's reputation was incinerated. It turned out his investors were local doctors and dentists he had met at the club. When news broke that he was broke and being sued for fraud by his own sister, the investors started digging. They found nothing. No crypto wallet, no development deals, just a Ponzi scheme of lies. I heard from Henderson that David was facing 3 separate lawsuits. Ashley's divorce lawyer was ruthless. She took the remaining assets he had hidden, a small brokerage account, and left him with the debt. The last I heard, David was living in a motel on the highway, working sales at a used car lot 2 towns over. He tried to call me once, from a blocked number. "Jen, come on. I'm sleeping on a mattress with bed bugs. You can't let this happen. Just loan me $5,000. I have a sure thing." I hung up before he finished the sentence. I blocked the number. The silence that followed was beautiful. As for Mom, the transition was brutal. I went to visit her at the senior complex a month later. It was a welfare check, really. I wanted to make sure she was alive. The apartment was small, tiny compared to the mansion. Her oversized Victorian furniture looked ridiculous crammed into the beige popcorn-ceilinged living room. She was sitting in her armchair watching a small TV. She looked frail. "Hello, Mom," I said, placing a bag of groceries on the counter. She looked at me. There was no fire left in her eyes, just a dull resignation. "The people here," she complained immediately, "they wear sweatpants to dinner. The coffee is instant. It's dreadful." "It's affordable," I said, "and it's warm." "David hasn't visited," she said, staring at the TV. "Not once." "He's busy, Mom," I said, not wanting to tell her he was dodging process servers. "I miss the house," she whispered. "I miss my garden." "You didn't take care of the garden, Mom. The landscapers did, and I paid them." She looked at me sharply. "You enjoy this, don't you? Seeing me like this?" I sat down opposite her. No, Mom, I don't enjoy it. It breaks my heart, but I don't regret it. There's a difference. I was a good mother, she said defensively. I gave you everything. You gave me a roof, yes, but you didn't give me a home. You gave that to David. You made me the servant in my own life so he could play prince. And look where it got him. He's unable to function in the real world because you never let him fail. She went silent. The truth hung between us, heavy and undeniable. I'm keeping the house, I told her. I'm not selling it. Her eyes widened. You're moving in? No, Mateo and I like our house. It's cozy, it's ours. I'm renovating the mansion. We're turning it into a multi-unit rental for visiting nurses and doctors. It's going to generate income, real income. You're turning the estate into apartments? She looked horrified. I'm turning a money pit into an asset, I corrected. I'm doing what Dad should have done. I'm building a legacy that actually lasts, instead of one that just looks good. I stood up to leave. Will you come back? She asked, a note of desperation in her voice. I'll bring groceries next week, I said, but Mom, don't ask me for money, and don't talk to me about David. I walked out. I didn't hug her. We weren't there yet. Maybe we never would be, but I had stopped seeking her approval, and that was enough. Driving away from the complex, I felt a profound sense of closure. The house of Usher had fallen. The toxicity was contained. I stopped by the mansion on the way home. Contractors were already there, Mateo's crew. They were ripping out the old, rot-infested deck David had promised to fix. Mateo was on the roof, wearing a harness, supervising the chimney repair. He saw my truck and waved. He looked like a king up there. He was in his element. He was building, he was fixing, he was real. I waved back, a smile spreading across my face. David had sneered that Mateo belonged in the kitchen. Now, Mateo was literally on top of the world, rebuilding the very structure David had destroyed. The irony was delicious. 8 months later. The sun was setting over the newly renovated property. It looked different now. We had removed the imposing, overgrown hedges that hid the house from the street. We had painted the shutters a welcoming slate blue. It didn't look like a fortress of snobbery anymore. It looked like a home. We were hosting a barbecue in the backyard. Not a gala, not a soiree, a barbecue. The smell of grilled ribs and charcoal filled the air. Music, actual salsa music, not classical chamber quartets, played from the speakers. Our guests were a mix of people who actually mattered. My coworkers from the logistics firm, Mateo's crew and their families, Uncle Howard, my dad's brother who had been ostracized by Mom for being too blue-collar, was there, laughing with a beer in his hand. "This place looks amazing, Jen," Howard said, walking over to me. "Your dad would be... Well, he'd be confused, but he'd be impressed. He'd be happy the mortgage is paid," I laughed. "And David?" Howard asked, his voice lowering. "Still in the wind," I said. "Last I heard, he moved to Florida, looking for a fresh start, or a new victim. And your mom?" "She's adjusting," I said. "She joined a bridge club at the center. She complains about the coffee, but she has friends. Real friends, I think. People who like her for her, not her address." "You saved them, you know," Howard said seriously. "You saved them from themselves. If you hadn't pulled the plug, David would be in prison for something worse than fraud, and your mom would be destitute." "I know," I said. "It just took a while for me to realize that saving someone sometimes looks like hurting them." I looked across the lawn. Mateo was at the grill, flipping burgers. He was laughing at something one of the nurses, one of our new tenants, was saying. He looked younger. The weight of the disrespect he had carried for years was gone. He saw me watching him. He handed the tongs to his friend and walked over. "You okay, boss lady?" he teased, wrapping his arms around my waist. I'm perfect, I said, resting my head on his chest. You know, he said, looking at the house, I was thinking, the kitchen is huge. Maybe we should eat in there tonight. I looked up at him and grinned. The kitchen? Yeah, it's the best room in the house. It's where the food is. It's where the warmth is. David said the help eats in the kitchen, I reminded him. Mateo kissed my forehead. David was an idiot. The kitchen is the heart of the home. And besides, we own the kitchen. We own the dining room. We own the roof. We can eat on the roof if we want. I laughed, hugging him tight. Let's eat in the kitchen, I agreed. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the property I had fought so hard to protect, I realized the final truth of my journey. I used to think being the provider was a curse. I thought it meant being used, but I had it wrong. Being the provider is a superpower. It means you have the competence, the grit, and the resilience to build a world. The parasites, the Davids of the world, they can only consume. They are fragile. When the host cuts them off, they wither. But the builders, the ones who buy the ice, drive the old trucks, and save the receipts, we endure, we rebuild, and in the end, we win. I looked around at the diverse, happy crowd in my backyard. This was the family I chose. This was the respect I earned. And it tasted so much sweeter than any imported wine. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of justice and resilience. See you in the next one.